They thought the stone walls were thick enough. They thought that if they buried her deep enough beneath the palace, wrapped her chains in blessed iron, and soaked her cell in Wolfsbane, the world would forget Princess Lyanna Ashford ever existed. For 7 years, she'd been the kingdom's best-kept secret, the rightful heir to the Silvercrest throne, locked away while her younger sister Celeste played princess in the sunlight above. But tonight was different. Tonight was Celeste's coronation. Every noble from the 5 kingdoms had gathered in the great hall directly above Lyanna's cell. The music vibrated through the stone. The laughter echoed down the walls, and somewhere in that crowd was a king. A king who'd traveled 3 weeks to attend the ceremony. A king whose bloodline was older than the palace itself. They thought he'd come for politics, for alliances, maybe for Celeste's hand in marriage. They didn't know he'd come following a dream. A voice that whispered through his sleep every night for a month. A scent of wild roses and rain that drove his Wolf insane with longing. Get ready. Because when King Caspian Thornwood follows a scent, walls don't stop him. Titles don't stop him. And God help anyone who stands between him and what his soul recognizes as home. Lyanna Ashford sat with her back against the damp stone wall, counting the vibrations from the ballroom above. Each thud of dancing feet, each burst of applause, each crystal-clear note from the royal orchestra. Her sister's coronation. The chains around her wrists were blessed iron, heavy and cold, designed to suppress shifter magic. They connected to manacles bolted into the wall, giving her maybe 6 feet of movement in the 12 by 12 cell that had been her world since she was 15. She was 22 now. 7 years in the dark. "They're dancing the coronation waltz," whispered Maven, her Wolf. Maven's voice was weak, strangled by the constant exposure to Wolfsbane that laced the water they gave Lyanna to drink. "I can hear it." "Don't," Lyanna said quietly. "Don't torture yourself. Too late for that." The heavy door at the top of the stone stairs creaked open. Torchlight spilled down, and Lyanna closed her eyes against the brightness she wasn't used to anymore. Footsteps descended. 2 sets. One heavy, one clicking on the stone like knife points. "Still breathing, I see," came the cold, melodious voice of Queen Regent Isolde, Lyanna's own mother. Lyanna didn't open her eyes. "Unfortunately for you." "Watch your tongue," snapped the second voice. "Celeste." Her sister sounded breathless, probably from dancing. "You speak to your queen." "Not my queen," Lyanna said flatly. "You stole that crown." A sharp slap echoed through the cell. Lyanna's head snapped to the side, but she didn't make a sound. She'd learned years ago that showing pain only encouraged them. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw them clearly in the torchlight. Her mother, still beautiful at 45, wearing a gown of midnight blue and a crown of silver stars. And Celeste, 19 and glowing in her coronation dress of white and gold, the Silvercrest tiara perched perfectly in her golden curls. They looked like royalty. Lyanna looked like a prisoner. Her dark hair was matted and dirty. Her dress, once white, was now gray with grime and torn at the hem. Her feet were bare, covered in cuts from the rough stone floor. But her eyes violet, the mark of the true Ashford line, still burned with defiance. "You should be grateful we let you live," Isolde said, crouching down to Lyanna's level, but staying carefully out of reach of the chains. "When your father died and left his ridiculous will naming you heir, I could have killed you outright. Why didn't you?" Lyanna asked, though she knew the answer. "Because the nobles remember you," Celeste answered, adjusting her tiara. The old guard still whispers your name. If you disappeared completely, questions would be asked. But this? She gestured around the cell. This is perfect. You're alive, technically. But no one knows where. No one can save you. Why are you here? Liana asked tiredly. Come to gloat? I came to give you a gift, Celeste said, pulling something from her bodice. A small vial of dark liquid. Concentrated Wolf's Bane. Enough to kill your Wolf permanently without killing you. Liana's heart seized. No, yes, Isolde said coldly. We can't risk you somehow breaking these chains and shifting. Tonight, with all the visiting royalty, security is complicated. Better to eliminate the threat entirely. Maven is all I have, Liana whispered. And for the first time in years, her voice cracked. Then you'll have nothing, Celeste said cheerfully. She handed the vial to one of the guards who'd followed them down. Make sure she drinks every drop. Celeste, please, Liana begged, hating herself for it. I'm already caged. I'm already broken. Don't take her from me. For just a moment, something flickered in Celeste's eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or pity, then it was gone. You should have been born second, Celeste said softly. Then none of this would be necessary. They turned and left, their footsteps fading up the stairs. The door slammed shut. The guard approached, uncorking the vial. Liana fought. She thrashed against the chains, kicked, bit, screamed. But she was weak from 7 years of starvation rations and Wolf's Bane poisoning. The guard grabbed her jaw, forced her mouth open, and poured the liquid down her throat. It burned like acid. Like swallowing molten silver, Maven's scream echoed through Liana's mind, a sound of agony and loss that would haunt her forever. Then, slowly, horribly, the presence that had been with her since birth began to fade. No, 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 Liana sobbed, curling into herself. Maven, don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I'm sorry. Maven's voice was barely a whisper now. I can single quotes T. Stay ... And then she was gone, Liana screamed. It was a sound of pure anguish, torn from the depths of her shattered soul. She screamed until her throat was raw, until she had no voice left. Then she just lay there on the cold stone and prayed for death. Upstairs. The coronation celebration was in full swing. King Caspian Thornwood stood at the edge of the ballroom, a glass of untouched wine in his hand, and tried not to murder anyone. He was a large man, 6'5", with shoulders that strained against his formal coat. His hair was black as midnight, worn long and tied at the nape of his neck. His eyes were amber Wolf eyes that glowed faintly in dim light, and right now they were scanning the crowd with barely concealed irritation. You look murderous, said his beta. Lord Kieran, appearing at his elbow. Try to smile. We're guests. I don't want to be here, Caspian growled. The ballroom stank of too many competing scents, perfume, sweat, arousal, ambition. It was nauseating. Then why did we travel 3 weeks to attend? Kieran asked reasonably. Because of a dream, Caspian thought but didn't say. Because for the past month, he'd been dreaming of a voice calling his name. A scent of roses and rain and something wild that made his Wolf Fenrir go insane with longing. The dreams had led him here. To Silvercrest. To this coronation. But now that he was here, standing in this ballroom full of simpering nobles, he felt nothing. The new queen, Celeste, was beautiful, but her scent was wrong. Cloying, artificial. Your Majesty, came a honeyed voice. Celeste herself glided up to him, her coronation dress catching the candlelight. "I'm so honored you could attend. Silvercrest has always admired the Thornwood Kingdom. Congratulations on your coronation," Caspian said politely, though his Volf was growling in his mind out wrong. "She smells wrong. This whole place smells wrong. Perhaps you'd honor me with a dance?" Celeste extended her hand, rings glittering. Caspian was about to decline when he smelled it. Just a hint. A whisper on the air that shouldn't have been possible through all the competing scents in the ballroom. Wild roses, rain, and underneath, something desperate and dying. His Volf exploded. "Mate!" The wine glass shattered in Caspian's hand. He didn't notice the blood dripping from his palm or the gasps from nearby nobles. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice dropping to a predatory growl that made Celeste stumble backward. I don't understand. The scent." Caspian's eyes were glowing now, fully Volf. "Where is she?" Queen Regent Isolde appeared, her smile fixed and cold. "Your Majesty, are you unwell?" "Perhaps the journey." Caspian grabbed Isolde by the throat and lifted her off the ground. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed forward. Nobles screamed. But Kieran and the other Thornwood wolves formed a barrier, snarling warnings at anyone who got too close. "The scent," Caspian repeated, his voice barely human. "I smell my mate. In this palace, underground, and she's in pain." Isolde's face went white. "You're mistaken. I never mistake the scent of my mate." Caspian's claws extended, pressing against Isolde's neck. "Where is she?" "Last chance before I start ripping off body parts." "The dungeons," Celeste whispered, her face pale with terror. "She's in the dungeons." Caspian dropped Isolde, who crumpled to the floor gasping. He turned to Celeste. "Show me, now." Celeste led them through the palace with hands trembling so badly she could barely hold the torch. Behind her, King Caspian radiated a fury so intense the very air around him seemed to shimmer with heat. They descended into the lower levels of the palace, past the wine cellars, past the storage rooms, down narrow stone corridors that grew colder and damper with each step. "How long has she been down here?" Caspian's voice was deadly calm. 7 years, Celeste stammered. Kieran inhaled sharply behind them. 7 years in a dungeon would break most wolves completely. They reached a heavy iron door. Celeste produced a key with shaking hands and unlocked it. The door swung open, revealing steep stone stairs descending into darkness. The scent hit Caspian like a physical blow. Roses and rain, but underneath pain, despair, and fresh agony so intense it made his Volf howl. "She's hurt," Caspian snarled. "What did you do to her?" "We gave her Volf's bane," Celeste whispered, concentrated. Her Volf is dead." For a moment, Caspian couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The rage that consumed him was so absolute, so perfect, that his vision went red. "Caspian." Kieran's hand on his shoulder was the only thing keeping him from shifting and tearing Celeste apart. "Later, find her first." Caspian descended the stairs 3 at a time. The cell at the bottom was small, dark, and smelled of mold and Volf's bane. And there, curled in the corner, was a figure in chains. She was so small, so still. For a horrible moment, Caspian thought she was dead. Then she stirred, lifting her head with obvious effort. Violet. Eyes met his amber ones. The mate bond snapped into place with the force of a lightning strike. It was agony and ecstasy, need and completion. A recognition so deep it felt like remembering a soul you'd known for 1,000 lifetimes. "You," Lyanna whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. "You're from my dreams." "And you're from mine," Caspian breathed. He crossed the cell in 2 strides and knelt beside her. Up close, he could see the extent of her suffering. The scars, the burns from blessed iron, the hollow look in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry you came all this way. I'm broken. My Wolf is dead. The bond will fade and—" "Never," Caspian interrupted fiercely. He reached out and cupped her face with surprising gentleness. "Do you feel this? This pull between us? That's not your Wolf. That's your soul recognizing mine. Wolves can die, little Rose. But souls are eternal." She stared at him, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. "I'm going to get these chains off you," Caspian said, examining the manacles. "And then I'm going to carry you out of here. And then," his eyes glowed dangerously, "then I'm going to burn this entire palace to the ground." "The chains are blessed iron," Lyanna said weakly. "They can't be broken." "Everything can be broken," Caspian said, "with enough motivation." He gripped the chains with both hands. His Wolf, Fenrir, surged forward, lending him strength. The iron was burning him, smoking where it touched his skin, but he didn't let go. He pulled. The muscles in his arms bulged. Veins stood out on his neck. The blessed iron groaned, resisting, fighting back with old magic. Caspian roared, a sound that shook dust from the ceiling and made the very stones tremble. The chains snapped. He caught Lyanna as she slumped forward, freed for the first time in 7 years. She was so light in his arms, so fragile. It broke something in him. "I've got you," he murmured, standing with her cradled against his chest. "I've got you, and I'm never letting go." She buried her face in his neck, breathing in his scent pine and smoke and winter wind. "Who are you?" "King Caspian Thornwood," he said. "Your mate, your salvation. And the last thing your family will ever see." Caspian carried Lyanna up the stairs. Each step was deliberate, controlled, though everything in him screamed to run, to get her away from this place of suffering as fast as possible. Celeste was waiting at the top, pale and shaking. Behind her, Kieran and the Thornwood guards had formed a defensive perimeter. "Your Majesty, please," Celeste started. "We can explain." "Explain?" Caspian's voice was so cold it could have frozen the sun. "Explain how you kept your own sister chained in the dark for 7 years. Explain how you poisoned her Wolf. Explain how you stole her birthright while she rotted beneath your feet." He looked at Lyanna in his arms. She'd passed out, her body, finally surrendering to exhaustion and trauma now that she felt safe. "There's nothing you can say that will save you," Caspian said. "Nothing you can offer that will spare you from what's coming." She was dangerous, Celeste tried desperately. She would have challenged my claim. The kingdom would have been divided. She was a child, Kieran interrupted, his normally calm voice laced with disgust. 15 years old when you imprisoned her. What threat could she possibly have been? Caspian didn't wait for an answer. He walked past Celeste, through the corridors, heading back toward the ballroom. His wolves fell into formation around him, a protective guard. "Where are you taking her?" Celeste called after him. "Somewhere she'd be safe," Caspian called back. "Somewhere you'll never touch her again." They emerged into the ballroom. The celebration had died. Nobles stood in clusters, whispering, sensing that something terrible was unfolding. Queen Regent Isolde stood at the center of the room, flanked by her guards. She'd recovered her composure, her face a mask of cold authority. "King Caspian," she said formally, You have assaulted the Queen Regent of Silvercrest and threatened the newly crowned queen. I'm afraid I must ask you to leave our kingdom immediately." "You have no authority to ask me anything," Caspian said. He walked to the center of the room, still holding Lyanna. "Not after what you've done." He raised his voice so every noble, every guard, every servant in the room could hear. "This woman," he gestured to Lyanna, "is Princess Lyanna Ashford, the true heir to Silvercrest, named in King Aldric's will. For 7 years, she has been imprisoned beneath this very ballroom while her family stole her throne." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some looked shocked. Others looked guilty, as if they'd suspected but done nothing. "That's impossible," Isolde said, but her voice wavered. "Princess Lyanna died of fever 7 years ago. Everyone knows this." "Then you'll have no problem explaining." "These," Caspian said, turning so the crowd could see the burns on Lyanna's wrists from the blessed iron chains. "Or the fact that she bears the violet eyes of the true Ashford line, while your daughters are merely blue." The crowd pressed closer, peering at Lyanna. Murmurs of recognition spread. Some of the older nobles were nodding. "I remember her," said Duke Pemberton, an elderly man with a cane. "She was presented at court when she was 10. Charming child. Those eyes. Yes, those are Aldric's eyes." "This is ridiculous," Celeste said, but her voice was shrill now, panicked. "She could be anyone. Some imposter this king found DNA testing," Kieran interrupted smoothly. "We can perform it right now. Royal bloodlines leave distinct magical signatures. If she's not Aldric's daughter, it will show immediately." Isolde's face went white. "Unless," Kieran continued, "you'd prefer not to test her? Because you already know what the results will show?" The silence was deafening. "She's unstable," Isolde tried one last time. "Even if she is Lyanna, 7 years in the dungeons has broken her mind. She's not fit to rule. And whose fault is that?" Caspian's voice was deadly quiet. He looked around at the assembled nobles. "I am invoking the right of challenge. As Lyanna's mate and protector, I challenge Queen Celeste's claim to the throne on grounds of treason, usurpation, and attempted murder of the rightful heir." The room exploded into chaos. "You can't do that." Isolde shrieked. "You're not even Silvercrest nobility. The right of challenge can be invoked by any mated pair where one is of royal blood," Kieran said. He'd clearly prepared for this, pulling out an ancient tome of Silvercrest law. "It's archaic, but it's never been repealed. According to your own laws, King Caspian has every right." "I accept the challenge," Celeste said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at her. "Celeste, no," Isolde hissed. "You can't fight him. He'll kill you." "Not him," Celeste said, her chin lifting with false bravery. "Her. If Lyanna is truly the rightful queen, let her fight for her throne. Or is she too broken?" It was a clever move. Lyanna was unconscious, weakened from 7 years of torture, and her Wolf was dead. Even if she woke up, she'd never survive a challenge fight. Caspian felt Lyanna stir in his arms. Her violet eyes fluttered open, confused and disoriented. Did she just? Lyanna's voice was barely a whisper. "Did she challenge me?" "You don't have to accept," Caspian said immediately. "I can fight for you. Or we can take you away from here, let you heal and know." Lyanna's voice was stronger now. She pushed at his arms, and reluctantly, he set her on her feet. She swayed, and he caught her, but she shook her head. "No, this is my fight." "Lyanna, your Wolf is dead," Caspian said urgently. "You can't shift." You'll be fighting her in human form while she has all the advantages. It's suicide. Then I'll die on my feet, Liana said. She looked at Celeste across the ballroom. I'll die fighting, not chained in the dark. Liana, please. She looked up at him, and the determination in her eyes stole his breath. I need to do this. I need to prove I'm not broken. Caspian wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at him to protect her, to shield her, to carry her away from this place and never look back. But he saw the truth in her eyes. She needed this. Needed to reclaim her power, her agency, her right to fight for what was hers. Okay, he said finally. But I'm right here. If you need me, I know, she said softly. She touched his face, a gesture so tender it made his Wolf whine. Thank you. For finding me. Always, he promised. The ballroom was cleared. Nobles pressed back against the walls, forming a circle. In the center stood Celeste, who'd already stripped down to a simple shift dress. Preparing to shift, Liana walked to the opposite side. She was still in her ragged prison dress, still covered in dirt and blood. She looked like she might collapse at any moment. Last chance to surrender, Celeste called. I don't want to kill you, sister. But I will if you force me. You already tried to kill me, Liana said. For 7 years you killed me slowly. At least this way, I get to hit back. Elder Thaddeus, the court's official witness, stepped into the circle. He was ancient, older than the palace itself, and his voice creaked like old wood. By the laws of Silvercrest, a challenge has been issued and accepted. The fight will continue until one party yields, is incapacitated, or dies. There are no other rules. He looked between the two women. Begin. Celeste shifted immediately. Her bones cracked and reformed with practiced ease. In seconds, a golden-furred wolf stood where she'd been. She was large for a female, well-fed and well-trained, and her eyes gleamed with confidence. Liana didn't move. Couldn't shift. Just stood there, small and human, and so very fragile. Celeste lunged. She was fast. Jaws aimed at Liana's throat, going for a quick kill. But Liana wasn't there. She'd moved at the last second, throwing herself sideways with desperate speed. Celeste's jaws snapped on empty air. She's fast, Kieran murmured to Caspian. How is she that fast without a wolf? Survival instinct, Caspian said. His hands were clenched into fists, his whole body rigid with the effort of not interfering. 7 years of being hunted by guards for sport. She learned to dodge. Celeste attacked again, claws extended, trying to pin Liana down. But Liana rolled, came up, grabbed a fallen candelabra from a side table, and swung it with all her strength that it connected with Celeste's snout. The wolf yelped, stumbling back. Blood dripped from Celeste's nose. She snarled, furious now, and charged again. This time she caught Liana. Her claws raked across Liana's arm, opening deep gashes. Liana cried out but didn't go down. She kicked Celeste in the ribs, hard enough that something cracked. They broke apart. Circling, Liana was bleeding badly, her prison dress now soaked with red. She was breathing hard, swaying on her feet. Liana, yield, Caspian called out, unable to stay silent. Please, you're dying. Not yet, Liana gasped. She looked at Celeste. Not until she pays. Celeste charged again, going for the kill. And something impossible happened in the space where Liana's dead wolf should have been. Something stirred. Not Maven. Maven was gone. Her spirit extinguished by the poison dot. This was something else, something older. Lyanna's eyes, already violet, began to glow. Not the normal amber glow of a wolf about to shift. This was different, brighter, more ancient. What's happening? Kirin whispered. I don't know, Caspian breathed. But his wolf Fenrir was howling in recognition and awe. She's awakening, Lyanna screamed. It started as pain but transformed into something else, rage, grief, power. Her body convulsed, not with a normal shift, but with something more violent. Her bones didn't just break and reform. They shattered and rebuilt into something new. Her skin rippled, not with fur, but with something that looked like liquid starlight dot, and then she was shifting. Impossibly, against all logic, she was shifting. But what emerged wasn't a normal wolf. The creature that stood where Lyanna had been was massive, easily twice the size of Celeste. Its fur was pure silver, shimmering like metal in moonlight. And its eyes, those eyes burned with violet fire so intense that looking directly at them hurt. Phoenix Wolf, Elder Thaddeus whispered, falling to his knees. The legends were true. Caspian understood in a flash. Phoenix wolves were myths, stories told to children. They were said to be wolves who truly died, and were reborn through sheer will and agony. They emerged stronger, faster, and blessed by the moon goddess herself. Lyanna had lost Maven, but from Maven's ashes, something greater had risen. The silver wolf looked at Celeste with those burning eyes. When she spoke, her voice echoed in every mind in the room. You took everything from me. My freedom, my youth, my wolf. Now I'm taking it back. Celeste tried to run. She didn't make it 3 steps. The silver wolf moved like lightning. One moment she was at the far end of the circle. The next she had Celeste pinned. Massive jaws closed around the golden wolf's throat, not biting down. Not yet, just holding. Yield. The silver wolf commanded. Celeste whimpered. Her wolf instincts screaming at her to submit to this apex predator, through the mind link that all wolves shared. Everyone heard Celeste's desperate thought. I yield. I yield. Please don't kill me. The silver wolf released her. Celeste scrambled away, shifting back to human form, naked and sobbing on the ballroom floor. The silver wolf turned to Isolde. The Queen Regent had been trying to slip away in the chaos, but now she froze, trapped by that violet gaze. You ordered my imprisonment, the wolf said. You ordered my torture. You tried to break me. I was protecting the kingdom, Isolde said, but her voice shook. You were too young, too idealistic. Celeste was the better choice. You were protecting your power, the wolf interrupted. Admit it. Isolde's mouth opened and closed. Finally, she lowered her head. Yes, I wanted to rule through Celeste. You would have been harder to control. At least you're honest now. The wolf sat back on her haunches, considering. I should kill you both. The law would permit it. Attempted regicide carries a death sentence. The ballroom held its breath. But I'm not you, the silver wolf continued. I won't become a monster to punish monsters. She turned to Elder Thaddeus. Strip them of their titles. Exile them to the border territories. Let them spend the rest of their lives as commoners, working for their survival. Let them learn what it means to be powerless. So witnessed, Elder Thaddeus said, bowing low. By right of challenge and divine manifestation, Princess Lyanna Ashford is declared the rightful queen of Silvercrest. The nobles as one dropped to their knees. Long live the queen, someone called out. Long live the queen, the crowd echoed. The silver wolf shimmered. Light enveloped her, and when it faded, Lyanna stood there, human again. Naked but somehow clothed in dignity and power, she swayed. The transformation having taken everything she had left, Caspian was there instantly, catching her before she fell, wrapping his coat around her. "You did it," he murmured, pressing his forehead to hers. "You beautiful, impossible woman. You did it." "I couldn't have," Lyanna whispered, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. "Not without you. You gave me a reason to fight. A reason to live." "You are my reason," Caspian said fiercely. "My queen. My mate. My everything." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "Take me away from here, please. I need to not be in this palace anymore." "Anywhere you want to go," Caspian promised. He lifted her into his arms again, and this time when he carried her, it wasn't a rescue. It was a claiming. "Kirin, prepare the convoy. We're leaving. What about the coronation?" Kirin asked. "She's officially queen now. There are ceremonies, protocols." "Can wait," Lyanna said firmly. "I've waited 7 years. The kingdom can wait a few more weeks while I remember what it means to be human." She looked out at the assembled nobles, meeting their eyes one by one. "I will return," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "I will rule. But first, I need to heal. Duke Pemberton?" She addressed the elderly noble who'd recognized her earlier. "I'm appointing you as regent until my return. Kirin will assist you. Rule justly. Rule with mercy. And if I hear of any corruption or cruelty..." Her eyes glowed violet for just a moment. "Remember what you saw here tonight. Remember that I am not just a queen. I am a Phoenix Wolf. And Phoenix wolves never forget." "Yes, your majesty," Pemberton said, bowing deeply. Caspian carried Lyanna out of the ballroom, through the palace halls and out into the cool night air. His wolves had prepared carriages, and he settled her carefully in the most luxurious one, lined with soft furs and cushions. "Where are we going?" she asked as he climbed in beside her. "My kingdom," Caspian said. "Thornwood. It's cold there, and wild, and very far from here. You'll be safe. You can rest. And when you're ready..." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "We'll plan our future." "Our future," she repeated softly. Then she smiled, a real smile, probably the first in 7 years. "I like the sound of that." The carriage started to move. As they left the palace behind, Lyanna watched through the window, her expression unreadable. "Do you regret not killing them?" Caspian asked gently. "You had every right." "No," Lyanna said. She turned away from the window and curled into his side. "Death would have been too easy. This way, they live knowing they lost. Knowing I survived everything they did to me and still won." She yawned, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "Sleep," Caspian murmured, pulling her close. "I'll keep watch." "I know," she whispered, already drifting off. "You always will." And for the first time in 7 years, Lyanna slept without nightmares. Safe in the arms of a king who would burn the world down before letting anyone hurt her again. The Thornwood Palace was everything Silvercrest wasn't. Where Silvercrest was golden stone and formal gardens, Thornwood was dark wood and wild forests. Where Silvercrest was warm and bright, Thornwood was cold and shadowed. Lyanna loved it. 3 months had passed since that night. 3 months of healing, of learning to be human again, of discovering what it meant to be safe. She stood on the balcony of the Queen's chambers, her chambers now watching snow fall on the pine forests below. She wore a gown of deep blue velvet, her dark hair pinned up with silver combs. The scars on her wrists were still visible, but they no longer shamed her. They were proof she'd survived. "You're thinking too hard again." Caspian's voice came from behind her. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "I can see the smoke from here." She laughed, leaning into him. "I'm thinking about going back." "To Silvercrest?" His arms tightened protectively. "We don't have to. Pemberton has things well in hand. You could rule from here, send messengers." "No," Lyanna interrupted gently. "I need to go back. Not because I have to, but because I want to. I want to walk into that throne room and sit in that chair and prove to everyone, including myself, that they didn't break me." "They didn't," Caspian said fiercely. "They never could have." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Over the past 3 months, she'd gained weight, muscle, strength. Her eyes were bright again. And within her, the silver wolf she'd named her Luna paced contentedly. "I'm ready," she said. "To be a queen. To rule. To face everything I ran from." "Then we go together," Caspian said. "The 5 kingdoms need to know that Silvercrest and Thornwood are united. That attacking one is attacking both." "A political alliance," Lyanna teased. "A love match," Caspian corrected. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I would have chosen you even without the mate bond, Lyanna. I would have chosen you every time." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I love you." He kissed her then, deep and possessive and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "There's one more thing," Lyanna said. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "Something I need to tell you before we leave." Caspian stared at her, then at his hand on her stomach, then back at her face, his expression cycling through confusion, hope, and pure joy. "You're pregnant," Lyanna confirmed, smiling through sudden tears. "About 6 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Caspian swept her up into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed. "A child. Our child. Lyanna, his voice broke. "I've never been this happy." "Neither have I," she admitted. She kissed him again, softer this time. "So let's go build a world our child can be proud of. A world where power isn't taken, it's earned. Where strength is measured in compassion, not cruelty." "Your Majesty, the convoy is ready." Kieran stopped in the doorway, taking in their expressions. "I'm interrupting something, aren't I?" "We're having a baby," Caspian announced, grinning like an idiot. Kieran's stoic expression cracked into a genuine smile. "Congratulations. Both of you." He bowed. "Long live the Queen, long live the Prince or Princess." "And long live the Alliance," Lyanna added. She took Caspian's hand. "Let's go home." "My home, our home." "And show them what a real queen looks like." They walked through the palace together, past bowing servants and saluting guards. As they stepped out into the snow, Lyanna paused, looking back at Thornwood one last time. This place had been her sanctuary, her healing, her rebirth, but Silvercrest was her destiny. "Ready?" Caspian asked. "Ready," Lyanna confirmed that, and hand in hand. The broken princess who'd been chained in the dark, and the king who'd found her there rode toward a future brighter than any crown. If you've stayed with us through this entire journey, through darkness and pain, Through rescue and redemption, I want to say thank you. Thank you for believing that broken things can be made whole again. That even in our darkest moments, hope can find us. If this story touched you, if it gave you even a moment of strength, please consider sharing it. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is remind each other that we're not alone in the dark. And that somewhere out there, someone is fighting to find us. Thank you for listening.